Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome, Doug. We're so
Right.
excited to have you here. We were introduced to you about a week ago with I'm a Kind Man, and that was kind of the beginning of what Doug does. And so Doug is back here again, but I just want to kind of just do just kind of like an overview, I guess, really quickly. What a Kind Man does is, it utilizes the 7 basic teachings of the 7 grandfathers to help heal Indigenous men. And it also does a lot of cultural programming as well. Um, and then we're looking at, I'm a Kind Man also looks at culture and traditions, and it also looks at healing ourselves. And so Doug is going to talk a little bit more about those, about that piece, about the culture and tradition, because we all know that those things were taken away when our parents went to residential school. Those things weren't given to us. And then we knew how to be a kind man prior to colonization, prior to residential schools, because we've heard from our residential school survivors of the horrible things that they went through. I'm also reading various books. I'm always reading. And we know that our men were really, really abused. Our boys were abused. And so they become abusers when they become adults, because that's all they learn. If you're brought up in that kind of environment, that's what you learn. And so, we really want to unpack this a little bit more with you to really understand, that men have a role to play. We have the Moon Tide campaign to end violence against women, right? And that's also a national campaign. But also, a Kind Man is also a provincial campaign, or a provincial training and provincial workshop. So I think that I've kind of said enough about what a Kind Man is, because it's really important that our viewers hear from you and hear from you directly, because you are a facilitator of I'm a Kind Man. You've been doing it for numerous years, because you and I have known each other now for, gosh, like I was thinking about that the other day, right? Yeah, I know, right?
12 years or more.
12 years or more, yeah. And just, you were doing that then, and how far you've come in your own journey and your own healing as a man and a kind man, and has taken these teachings as well. So welcome, Doug. I'm thrilled that you're here and that we're doing, we continue to do this work and raise this platform for our voices to be heard. So you space and the place, Doug, and I want to turn it over to you. So welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. Oh yeah, it's been a journey for me, even to be involved with the Kind Man. The Kije Ishnabenin. I am a kind man. So this is kind of like would be our first segment out of 7, and this one is kind of like what we call wisdom. And when we come together, one of the things we like to do is, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a little smudge here. I have to do uptown smudging. So basically, I'm just kind of cleansing the room, cleansing myself, cleansing my mind, my heart, my spirit, because we don't know what may have happened to me before I came to group tonight. And I just don't think that it's required that anything that happened to me through the course of the day in bad ways needs to be brought in here. And it's not for me to share that kind of energy, maybe to share the words, just not the energy. So I want to make sure that's cleaned up. It's one of the first things we do. So tonight, again, as I said, it's on wisdom. So firstly, I like to say that if there's any men here, that the first step is wisdom, is to get here. You had to be wise enough to come here for whatever reason that brought you here in the first place. There's various reasons why. Sometimes it's just because we heard it from somebody, that this was a good program, or to be supportive of somebody that come to the program. But mostly it's been a lot of the cases, it's mandated through the courts and probation, parole, that sort of thing. And it is a diversion program, so you're not having to take something like PARS or one of the other ones like that. So, and we had always offered this for free for our clients. So I just want to thank you for coming. And when we first come in, generally we like to do a check-in. So all the guys that would be in the group would introduce themselves, their clan, their nation, if they know, either or just themselves and what brought them into the group. So I will just start and how this would look for me. So Sego, Lajin How Shongets. I'm here as the facilitator of the group, and my week leading up to this was actually pretty good. I like to always say it's been awesome. Some days are more awesome than others. Um, with especially with all the things that have been going on lately out there in the world. Sometimes it's just very heavy, and we can take that heaviness on. And I want to make sure that I don't have that. So I do my best within this, and not to carry other people's or the world events on my shoulders, because I'm just one guy trying to figure myself out. I'm a dad. I have 5 kids, 4 sons and a stepdaughter, and I'm in a different relationship now where there's 2 girls and a boy. So I got kind of a lot of young people, kids surrounding me, and they have been for a long time. And they're some of my greatest teachers when it comes to this, because it's for them that I'm trying to be that good, kind man, the Kije Nabe, and that is an Ojibwe way of thinking about it. I am Haudenosaunee, but I also have a little bit of that Anishinaabe in me from my mom's father. So I have some of that within my blood and stuff like that. So the second thing I would like to say is thank you to all the women out there who have maybe triggered their men into that role of abusiveness, because sometimes we don't know that we have it, and we need to have acknowledgement about that. So sometimes it comes up in various ways. The third thing I like to say is, what I've been doing this for 14 years, up thereabouts, 12, 14 years. And one of the things that I really had to learn also through this was not all men are the abusers. Sometimes where there is some goodness, and that doesn't happen, but women within a relationship can also be the unhealthy abusing partner within that. And just because a man may raise his hands up or push that aggressiveness away, and if she falls or just claims that he touched her, then he is in violation and he could be charged for an abuse. So not always is the men the abusers when they come to this group. Also, it's not closed to just Aboriginal. No, I don't even like to use that word. I don't even know why I said that, to Indigenous males. Because one of the things that we have to acknowledge is when we're trying to heal our wounds and that abusive patterns, is that we must feed our spirit properly. So once we can identify that, then we can begin to heal. But also the fact that all men have spirit. So I've opened this up to all men to come to this group. We don't look at each other as barriers of race, just that we all have those abilities to abuse. So with that being said, also, I want to acknowledge that those things that we learn, as Sherry had said at the beginning, the abusive patterns, we can become good at it. It's the more you practice something, the better you become at it. So we do end up practicing abusive patterns even when we don't know that we're doing it. So to identify those things, that's part of the wisdom. I have these patterns inside of me. I want to fix these things. I want to be better. So that's why people come to this group, and why I kind of line it up that way. And as we go around the circle, I get to know a little bit more about them, what they're like, even their demeanor and how they speak. A lot of times they come in and I'm here because I have to. But after a while, they start to realize, hey, I do have these things inside of me. I have been abused. and I need to fix this so I'm not continuously abusing outwards and abusing myself, my kids, or my partners, society, the community, or just anyone. Just having that kind of energy to be put out there. So, and usually I kind of like to just ask questions about the guys when they're in here, and so since I don't have that at the moment, I can only do the best I can. So, and I'll just talk about me. And when I start the program, part of the thing is that there could be a room full of men not knowing me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. I work at Brantford Native Housing. I've been there for 14 years in some capacity, just in a contractual capacity. I'm was part of their social programming side and did a lot of programming for children, males, females, families over the course of the years. Um, I did say that I have 5 children, and well, 8 children, and I have 5 grandchildren. So I'm kind of surrounded by all that. Um, and that I have been a very abused male right from the time I was little. Um, a lot of abuse happened to me, and I tried my best not to push it out, but I began to get full of it. And it started to spew out of me, and I started to become abusive. Not so much physical abusive, but in other ways. And we'll get into that in a moment. So yeah, I'm sorry. It's just a little bit rough when I don't have that audience, and I'm so used to being able to kind of ask questions and stuff. So it's a little bit more difficult for me to do this platform this way. Um, so I've been abused excessively through many things. For one thing, my last name is Doolittle. So when I was a kid in the 60s, I was born in 1960, and I think it was 1967 or 8 or something like that. This fantastic movie I watched came out. It was called Dr. Doolittle. And I watched this amazing thing where these animals were talking, and this man, Dr. Doolittle, was talking to them, and they began to converse. And I thought this was amazing because TV was new to me. We didn't have a lot of money, and I was at my grandmother's house, and we were watching this show, and it was just amazing. And so the next school day, I get to school, and 2 of my classmates had brought their pets in. One was a hamster, and one was a rabbit. And the reason they did that because they knew there was a Doolittle in the classroom, and that was me. So they brought their pets up to me as soon as they see it. Okay, what is my pet saying? What is my rabbit saying? And I got nothing. So I was beat up. So just because of this TV show, my last name, so it was quite harsh. And I didn't quite understand why that would take place. And then, like time had passed, and I started to witness a little bit other things in there. I grew up off the reserve in mainstream, being non-native, and when it became we were playing in the yard, it was the Cowboys and Indians was a big thing back then when I was little, and I never wanted to be the Indian because what they were teaching me in school was harsh, that we were savages and we were no good. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be savage, and I didn't want to be no good. So I always tried to be the cowboy in the group. So again, abusive patterns started happening because they did know that I was darker skinned than them, and they knew that Indians were darker skinned. So I was labeled, and I began to be abused by that. Skipping ahead a little bit, my parents and my family, we were transient. Basically, we didn't live in one spot very long. We were always moving around. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because you need to trust me. I'm trying to get you to trust me that I'm I'm here for you. So I have a story, and I want you to know my story so that you can build a positive foundation, a strong foundation as the groups go on. Because you got to know that I'm speaking what I'm trying to help you with. I've lived it. I've earned my stripes within it, and I've done so much work around this. So our family moved quite a bit. It was like I moved almost every school year. When I was 10 years old, we moved to the reserve for the first time, and I was terrified. I was terrified because I'm moving in with the Indians, the savages, and I did not have any any knowledge about this whatsoever because my family wasn't like that. They had grown up off the reserve and they were Christianized because of residential school, and they didn't teach me any of those things other than just what was taught in off-res schools. So I moved to the reserve, and it wasn't a fun time. We went from living in some nice house to living on reserve in this old shack and no running water. The bathroom was an outhouse outside. It was quite a cultural shock for me and for my brothers, and I would imagine a bit for my parents. And then I started school, and I started there in grade 5. So my birthday's in October, so I started earlier. So I was 10 years old going into grade 5. And it was like the second day of being in school. We had to catch the bus. After the second day of school, they found out that by the way I talked, because apparently I had an accent to them, that I was not like them. And so a couple of guys decided that they were going to beat me up. They were just random. I'd get off the bus and they started beating me. So this abusive pattern started happening. And what happened, I felt like, oh my God, like this is true. I am living with the savages. And I got beat up, go to my classroom, and because I was late for homeroom, the teacher was very strict, and he would walk around with 2 rulers, and he smacked me on the shoulders because I was late for homeroom. And it wasn't even my fault. Didn't even care what the reason was, or that I was all dirty and I was bleeding from a lip. Didn't matter. Just that I was late for his class. And so I get that. So, and then, every day this would happen. But also during those few days, my mom had decided that she wanted to continue her education. And she was quite young when she had me. She was 16 years old when I was born. And so her life has changed. And so during this time, she decided that she was going to go and get some more schooling done. And one morning, just I think it was only like a week after me starting school, she decided that this was going to happen. And then she woke me up, and I was the oldest of 5 boys. And she handed me a list and said, "Get this list done before I come home tonight." And out the door she went. I didn't even know where she was going. She just left. My dad was gone to work, and she left. And I'm 10 years old, almost 11 though, and I'm having 4 younger brothers. And the list was get them up, make their lunches, get them dressed, get their breakfast, get them to the bus stop, which was almost a kilometer away, get them on the bus. After school, get them on the bus and get home, clean the floors, sweep the floors, do the dishes, and start supper. And I'm 10 years old. And so this began. And I failed the first time. And so I got beat up. And these words came from her mouth, and I remember them. And it was, wait till your father gets home. My dad was unhappy as well. And he became a drunkaholic, workaholic. And so when he come home, she got right in his face, and he had been drinking, and she got him to beat me up again. So my day would start off with getting beat up at school, get hit by my teacher, get beat up by my mom, and get beat up by my dad. And let's add every third day, because I was late for homeroom every day because I was getting beat up every morning. On the third day, I would have to go to the principal's office and get a strap. So I would get beat up, get hit by my teacher. On the third day, I get a strap, get home, fail the list. My mom would beat me up, and then she'd wait till my dad got home, and then I'd get beat up. So here's this pattern. I would become extremely abused, beat up all the time, put down. I'm no good. So no self-worth began to happen. And I lived like that for many years. I don't know why I'm not a statistic, because technically, with everything that I've learned and read, that I would have been a prime candidate for suicide, but I never did. One of my biggest contributors to that is my paternal grandmother. I was her oldest grandchild, and she nurtured me. She protected me whenever she could. Couldn't do it all the time, but she did it when she could. I'd run away from home, get caught. That would be disastrous for me. Sometimes I made it to her house and she would protect me. So these things have happened through the course of my life, but most of it was perpetuated, and it's unfortunate. And I held a huge grudge. It was my mom, and I didn't like her. I didn't like her at all, and it sucked, because what person, what child doesn't want to like their mom, love their mom? But it took me a long time to realize what was happening, because it got worse. And yes, there were times that I aggravated the situation because I wasn't allowed to do much. And if I want to do something, I'm going to get beat. So a lot of times I would just do it because I knew I was going to get beat. So I'm just going to get beat. Doesn't matter. So, and that was my life. So I'm sharing, again, like I said, I'm sharing this with you because so that you have an understanding that I'm not just the school book learn. I've gotten all the trainings. But in order to trust me, you got to know that I have my story, and just like you have your stories, and we all have our stories. There's hundreds of thousands of stories that are similar but unique to that person. I cannot even tell you that I know your story. I can't even tell you that I can help you through your story, because I don't know if I can. I don't know what your story is yet. Until I find out a bit about your story, then all I can do is relate a little bit about myself, so that you can maybe feel something inside of yourself, knowing that you're not alone. So over the course of time, things started to happen, and going into relationships, I became a dad at 19. Um, I was with this woman, and I have to remember, I'm not putting anybody down. I'm not judging anybody. Everybody, like I said, has their story. I met this woman, and I didn't know all her story. We didn't really talk about these things because we were not taught to do that. So I met this woman, this young girl, actually. She was only 17, 18. And we began this relationship, and she became pregnant. She told me that she was on birth control, and I believed her, but also I have to take ownership of my side, because I am 100% responsible for my role within this. Regardless if she said she was on birth control or not, I still could have protected myself, but I didn't. And we ended up having it. She ended up being pregnant, and I did the right thing against my own personal wishes and my own self. I wanted to do the right thing, and so I married her. And we ended up having 3 more children. Through that, tried to make things better, but nothing got better. It just got worse. Which is worse. And then that lasted for 7 years, and the abuse that began to happen wasn't really a physical abuse. It was other forms of abuse, and I'm going to go through that right now. So there's generally 4 aspects of abuse. You can see the medicine wheel behind me in the 4 directions, but there is a little bit more to that. First one is spiritual. I don't know if that's backwards on you, if I was supposed to write that backwards. Um, so spiritual abuse can happen where you're not honored by your own spirituality. You put somebody down because of their spirituality. Next one is physical abuse. So that's hitting, punching, causing marks, jabbing, pushing, all kinds of things become physical. Hitting with things. The next one is sexual abuse. And there's all kinds of ways that sexual abuse happens. No means no. Doesn't mean later. That's an abuse. Even acknowledging your own sexuality. Somebody putting that down because you may be a little bit different within that sexual abuse. Touching somebody unwanted, sexual abuse. Even sometimes, especially in some of our cultures, our indigenous cultures, so even holding hands may be deemed as something not proper. I've heard those stories as well. So if I were to go to grab her hand, if she was from that also could be construed as a sexual abuse, as a physical as well, and other ones as well. So sexual abuse, and then we have, excuse me, mental abuse. So playing with the mind games and things like that, and also emotional. These two can go together, but they're also separate. Emotional is playing with the heart. Mental is playing with the head. So we do that, and those can be quite powerful. These are the most powerful abuses because they're hidden. They're hidden scars. They're hidden marks. They're hidden bruises. Bruise in the heart. Bruise in the mind. Bruise inside of us. The other abuses are, you can actually feel it, especially physical abuse, marks and bruising and things like that. Those are the telltale signs. So I went through that, and that lasted for 7 years with that partner with 3 children. And then I became involved with someone else, and we were together for 25 years, and she had a daughter. That's where my daughter comes from. And we had a son. And it was great times and fun times, and then things began to change. So, and I'll get to that in a moment. And then after 25 years, that split up, and it was me. I was the one who left her because I wanted something something that's needed to change. I began to change. I started taking Kijé program, and I began to identify some of these things and within inside of myself. Tried to have conversations, but it didn't always work out well because I didn't know the extent of the abuse of her, even after 25 years. So that ended. I was alone for a little while, and I started another relationship that lasted a couple of years, and it also kind of happened. Something happened within that as well. So I kind of looked at all those things, and what was the common denominator in those 4 relationships? It was me. I was the common denominator in those. So obviously it was something I was doing, and I couldn't figure it out because I never hit anybody. I tried to support. I tried so many things. I didn't realize what I was doing. And mostly I was trying to figure out how to stand up for myself. But because the partners were also not healthy and lived through abusive patterns, we began to clash within those abusive patterns. But as I said, I was the common denominator, and I had to figure that out. And I was doing this Kijé program, and I started to identify a lot of these little things that started happening. But with me, it was something different. And for me, it was enabling. So my first relationship, she didn't finish school. She was in an sexual abusive relationship, and I didn't know any of that. So she brought that into the relationship. I also brought my mom and my father's abusiveness into the relationship, and that clashed really bad because I was still young, didn't know what I was doing. And so it began really turning bad really quick. And one day she pushed me down the stairs, and that was it for me. I couldn't take it anymore. It was in front of my kids, and I didn't want them to be like that. Didn't want them. And inside of me, I didn't want to be like my mother and father. So I actually walked away from that. And it was hard for me to do because I was doing it to my children, and I loved them like crazy. I didn't want them to have that sort of thing in their lives, but it was happening. And then the next one, we were together, like I said, for 25 years, and all fun and games in the beginning. And I decided to start change. I started the Kijé program towards the last few years of that. And I began to realize then too that what I was doing, and I didn't mention in the first one, but my first one, because she didn't have any education, she didn't have any prospects, and pregnant 3 times in a very short period of time frame, and hormonal things were happening inside of her with all that. And I did everything for her as best as I could. And, not everything. I suppose that was the wrong thing to say. I did so much for her to help her, to try to encourage her to do things. And if she couldn't do it, I would do it. So, we do, like at the beginning, we become good at what we practice. So she was able to practice not having to do anything. And I practiced trying to do everything to try to make her happy. Didn't work. The second one for 25 years, I did the same thing to her. She came from a life, and I didn't find out till later on what had happened to her. And as I started to find these things about myself, I started to change some of those things, which caused me to stop trying to make her happy, trying to get her to be happy or whatever, when it wasn't even my job to do that. It was her job to be happy. But I was enabling her not to do any of these things because it was just easier. That's the way I figured it anyways. And thought in my mind, I was just being a good guy. So in a way it was, but also in a way I wasn't, because she got older in life and didn't have things that she probably needed for her own sake to be happy, other than vices that mask your unhealthiness or your sadness and all those things like that. So, and I began to change, and I ended up leaving her too, because I couldn't continue this unhappiness, this separation within us. It wasn't working. And I couldn't make her do her work. I can only get me to do my work, and I was doing it. And I was doing so much to try to better myself for the sake of my children, which caused part of that enabling abuse to happen, because I would do anything. And if she didn't want to do it, I would just do it. So, and it created a separation between us. There was no yelling, screaming, hitting, or anything like that. It just, we just began to cohabitate, and it wasn't good for either one of us. Neither one of us was happy. So I changed that. Then the next one was the same thing, was good, and then things started happening. And I'm not faulting anybody, because it was me. It was my role. I'm the one who did it. I was the one who said, you don't have to do nothing for me. I will do my stuff for me. And I will take the blames for things. I'll take the hit on things. But what happened was I went into another relationship, and something was happening. And I said to her, when did you start becoming like my, and that's when it hit me. When did you start becoming like my mom? And what happened was, that list that my mom gave me was a to-do list on how to earn and gain her love. So I was not worthy of their love, or even them trying, or whatever. It was me always trying to show you that I love you. I'm going to show you by all these things. I'm going to work hard for you. I'll run to the store for you. I'll do the grocery shopping. I'll go get gas in your car. I'll go to the store for you. I'll do laundry. I'll even clean. And I'll work 12, 14 hours a day. And I wasn't giving myself that same back. I was so self-abusive within that. I didn't even know I was. Wasn't happy. So I began that. And it was hard for me to come to that realization that I was the one who taught them all how to love me. You need to abuse me. You need to show me unworthiness, because that's what I was taught as a child. So that's kind of where we come within the first segment of the Kijé program, wisdom. We need to identify these things about ourselves. We need to take a look at these things. And that's why I tell the story. And there's more to the story. There's so much more. As the weeks go on, you'll learn more and more about me. I am an open book in these cases. I do not say names of my partners, and some people do know. I will never vilify them, because it's not good for anybody to do that. And especially for me, why would I do that? That's an abusiveness. That needs to end. So I don't talk bad about these people. So that's my opening, and that's who I am, and that's why I got here to where I am today. There's also a couple of things that I do talk about as well at the beginning of this. There are some things that rules, I suppose. I don't really like the rules. There's just ways of doing things and ways of not doing things. And one of the things that we don't do in this program, we do not use the word, it's the big H word, and I only say it once, and that's hate. Not allowed to use that word. You have to use a different word. So what happens when we do that? We have to make a choice, because a lot of us use that word like any other word. And I'm going to say it again a few times. I hate this. I hate that. I hate this. Hate, 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 hate. Like, think of how low your spirit feels if all you're doing is hating everything. I hate her. I hate him. I hate me. I hate what they've done to me. I hate the court systems. I hate all those things out there that done all those things to me. Hate, hate, hate. Don't use that word. So it's gone off the table. So you got to use something else. I dislike this. I strongly dislike this. Whatever that may be. And that also opens up the opposite side. If you're right-handed, it opens up the left side of your brain. If you're left-handed, it opens up the right side of your brain. So it creates new pathways in which we can start to begin some of this healing process. Start to think a little bit different. The other thing is no derogatory remarks about your exes or your present partner. I do not even like baby mama or baby daddy. Don't you like using those words? These people generally have names, or my ex. That's good. You don't have to. There's no derogatory remarks allowed in this program concerning women at all. So, and I will point them out every time. I will correct that. And I won't do it in bad ways or go, I told you not to say that. Not like that. Excuse me, what did you just say? And usually they go, oh, and then they correct themselves, because they have been, basically been told we do remember things. So, yeah, so that's kind of where that is. So we go through this thing, and we get to know more and more about me. So now I'm going to tell you a story. I told you a story about me, but this is a different story. And this is what we do within abusive patterns. We tend to hang on to these things like our past. I did the same thing. I held on to that abusive pattern from my mom and from my dad. I hung on to the abusive patterns from people calling me Dr. Doolittle. I held on to people, abusive patterns and things, bad energy, low energy, people calling me other things like do nothing, do less, do more. I went through all that. So, and I held on to those things a lot of times. I've held on to the energy from my first partner on certain things. Um, my second partner, I've held on to some of that energy, which didn't serve me, but I was hanging on to it. So here's a story that was told to me by an old native man. And he said this: down in South America, monkeys are in the jungle. And a lot of people back in the day, and probably still do, they go and capture monkeys. And they do use them for experiments, for testing products, medicines, vaccines, all kinds of things. Um, and even worse, sometimes they're butchered in ways, you know, for food or prizes and trophies and things like that. So, and the indigenous people, like the poachers, would be down there catching them, and the indigenous people down there would be watching them and trying to stop them. But because the poachers had guns and they did not, they were kept away. So this is what they used to do. So they would go into a clearing between two treed-in areas, and they'd be watching in between there for a path that was kind of constantly used. So they figured the monkeys would be going from one place to another because they're always looking for different kinds of food, and they like to move around. So what they did was set snares up on these pathways. And as the monkeys would go from one point to the next point to get to the trees, one of them would get caught in a snare. Caught, stuck, can't get out. This is where I like my audience. So, anyways, here's the monkey, poor monkey, stuck in this thing, and he's there for a while. And what do you think is happening? Well, the other monkeys, they're communal. They were trying to help him, so they'd be pulling on him. And here's the poor wrist flung in this snare, and it's getting tighter and tighter around his legs. You can even see my hand; it's beginning to get red because I'm hanging on to it tight. So the circulation is beginning to become poor, and they're pulling on him. So after a bit of time, they stop. And the reason they stop is because they have little ones and they need to get them to the trees into protection. So they leave. So what happened to this poor monkey who was trapped in the snare, who was losing circulation in his hand, probably hurt, and it's probably bleeding because it's been cutting into him. And he's been there now for hours. So what do you suppose is happening to him? He's getting dehydrated, scared, agitated, hurt, bleeding, and alone. He's been abandoned. Not a good way, right? Not good. It's so sad of a story. So here he is, stuck in this thing. And the poachers aren't coming back that day. And the next day, he's still in it, pulling and pulling and pulling. Now, at some point, he's here for a couple of days, stuck. And so now he's thirsty, hungry, in pain, and probably been sliced open from here and starting to get infections. The flies come inside in, he's probably getting infected. Now he could chew his arm off to get free. He doesn't really want to do that. So he's stuck there. So all these emotions are going through him. And if the poachers don't come back anytime soon, he's going to die. So the indigenous people have been watching this. Sometimes they go out there and save them if they can, but they're not always around. And plus, they're in fear in case of guns. So what they decided to do, they knew that they couldn't stop the poachers from doing this. So they decided to teach them how to capture them in a better way. So what they did was they get a box. And on the box, inside the box, they hung a banana with a hole in it in the side of the box. Put that along that pathway. So as the monkeys go by, they see this box and they all kind of screech to a halt. and they're looking at this box and they can sense that there's food in it. And they start scrambling with one another, fighting with one another. And the winner, which is usually the alpha male, gets to go to the box. And he slips his hand into that hole and grabs that banana. And he's stuck. Stuck in the box. He's got what's in his hand? It's that banana. And he's stuck. And the family's over there trying to pull him out, pull him out, pull him out. And he's stuck in that box, can't get out, pulling and pulling that banana in his hand. And after a while, they have to leave because of the little ones. They need to get them to protection. Start getting dark. Wild animals could come out. They need to get them protected. So off to go. So here he is, abandoned, stuck in this box. But what's he holding on to now? He's been in this box for a few hours. Let's say 4 hours. He's stuck in there. And you might say, well, there's that banana in his hand. Yeah, the banana's in his hand. But he's been squeezing so hard. Is there even a banana on his hand? The next day, he has fallen asleep holding on to that. Wakes up in the morning, he's still trying to get out. And he's trying to get that banana out. He's been fighting and fighting. So what now is in his hand? Probably nothing. Right? The banana's been all squeezed out. Maybe the squishy, he can feel a squishy peel in his hand. So he knows there's something there. So what happens? Why is he stuck in that box? So the poachers come and they throw a burlap bag over his head and out he comes. What was holding him in that box? One thing was his mind. He held on so tight to a thought of something being in his hand that he couldn't let go and that he was trapped. The burlap bag comes over his head. It changed his thought process right away. Let go and came out. He was free. And that's what I like about Kijé. And what I try to do is to theoretically throw a burlap bag over your head so that you can let go of those issues, those old thoughts of abuse and things that happen to you, things that you've done. We need to let go of them so we can begin to heal. And that's what that story is about. So maybe something stuck in your heart, maybe something stuck in your mind. Hopefully it was something good that helped you to realize that we all hang on to things. Every one of us hangs on to something about our past, whether it's good or bad. A lot of the bad stuff, and we bring from relationship to relationship to relationship because it's in there. We're holding on so tight somewhere back there. So we bring it to here. We need to figure out how to let that go. So when I come into this relationship, I'm not hanging on to that, but I'm coming in with just this. So that's what this first week is about, is to have that wisdom, that to know that you are the one that is carrying these things. Even if you're not the abuser, you're still carrying these things because you're still hurt. So that's kind of where this is for the first week. Generally now we go around and we talk about your experience of what I just told you. We begin to smudge again, so you're not carrying these stories or this built up energy inside of you. And we talk about what triggered you. What triggered you in this? For me, these trigger moments would have been that I was the abuser, that I was an abuser. May not been the sexual, the physical, or those ones, but definitely a mental and emotional, by what I used to do, by being an enabler of them not having to do anything for me, and I'll do everything. So and then I'd be upset because they didn't have to do anything for me, or they got to be good at not doing anything for me. If I asked for them to do something for me and they said no, I'd be upset. I did all this for you, and you can't do one thing for me? Yeah, that was me. I don't do that anymore, but I had to let that stuff go. I had to let that peace go within inside of me so that I can go forward. And now in this relationship that I'm in now, like when I said, when did you start to become like my mom? I was the one who trained them all to love me the same way my mom was loving me. I need to fight for it. And if I'm not fighting for it, there's something wrong. So I'm going to create something that I need to fight for that from you, from that partner of mine. So excuse me for a second. So that piece is my role within that. And we would smudge again to smudge out. And a lot of times the guys would come up and thank me and give me a hug. And usually the first week we would run past the time because they would want to talk about these trigger mechanisms and things that happen inside them. So the first week is about wisdom, learning to be wise about yourself, and then opening up to the wisdom of those relationships and what you've done. What was your role within that relationship that caused the abusive things to happen? Like, even if you were not the abuser, you were a trigger to that person to allow them to open up. So if we can identify a lot of these things, then we can have a better understanding how to correct the situations before they get worse, or just keep repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating over and over and over again, getting more and more angry at each other until the proverbial crap hits the fan and bad things begin to happen. So with that being said, thank you for being part of this. And that would be our first week. And that, yeah, then that would be it. There you are. Thank you.
I know I don't have controls, and so Jody has controls, and so when I said thank you, she must have heard me. But you know, just want to talk a little bit more about I'm a Kind Man, just so that we can, you know, people really get an understanding of really what it is, you know, because it's, you know, it is also changing mindset in yourself, in your heart, understanding where those hurts come from, understanding the, you know, the trauma that happened in the past as a young child, and healing that inner child. Because as men, right, you know, you're not encouraged to do those kinds of things, right? And we live in that Western dominant society where, you know, that is also hierarchical and a masculine energy, right? A following that you must do these things in order to be, you know, in order to be the person that you are, but or that you came out to be. But you know, when we look back as well, you know, that we talk about in the attitudes and the beliefs and the behaviors that that men, and even women, but men have about women. And, you know, and we have these ideas and these attitudes about sexism and harassment, about masculinity, about sexuality and indigenous identity. And so from my understanding from the I'm a Kind Man program, like, it's all for all intersections of society, where people have had maybe different things that have happened to them in the past. But how can you talk a little bit more about, you know, even just the masculine energy that comes forward, and that you really have to unlearn some of our own tools that we had in our own toolbox about masculinity?
A lot of times when the guys come in here, like, they've been traumatized so strongly, not just by home life or society or cultural or even within community. I think a lot of them have come in through the justice system. So they've gone through jails and stuff. So there's all this weight that's been put onto them to be a certain way, to fight, to cling to being strong. Don't show any emotion because that's a sign of weakness, and I am going to be, somebody's going to make me pay for showing signs of weakness. And that is hard. It's the toughest thing, that even for me, like, I couldn't cry for the longest time because of it as well, because I was already weak. I was small and beat up, and I was weak, but I tried not to cry because I don't want to be any weaker than my physicalness was allowing. So, and we're just not taught. Suck it up. You don't have I'll give you something to cry about. All those things. We've been all subjected to those things. Um, but especially because of the breakdown of our family identities through residential school and the abuses that happen, like I didn't realize I couldn't come to terms with my mom until I realized what happened to her. And she didn't go to residential school, but she was affected by her older brothers and sisters and community members who come home in the summertime from residential school. So they were little and they got more abused. I believe they got more abused than the kids that went in residential school, because residential school kids got abused by strangers. The kids that were at home got abused by their loved ones. So that disconnect from everything. And my mom put so much of that anger into me. And she beat down my masculinity. I didn't even know how to even have it for the longest time. So to even talk about masculinity, sometimes I get choked up, because I'm just now being able to embrace it in a positive, healthier way than ever in my entire life. So it's a little bit tough for me to actually talk about that right now, because I'm still trying to identify with my own masculinity. My
And we
mom
haven't
made me to
even,
be feminine,
sorry.
right? My mom
Yeah,
tried to make me feminine.
yeah. But, and having those really negative aspects between masculine and feminine energy as well, because we all have it. And that's really interesting that you're saying that. When I look at, because I'm an avid reader and like I love history and I love learning, when we look at the founding of Canada, or when Canada started forming, and a lot of people that would come over, that were coming over and seeing that the women really had a central role in community, right? And that was, and colonization has beaten our men into submission to act like them. That you have to show the woman, her place, and and even those rules, right, of women as property, that never happened. That wasn't over here. But when we look at the Indian agent and how the Indian agent really had control over the community, and that's learned behavior. Like if you do a certain thing, I'll give you food. If you do a certain thing, I'll give you this, right? And so that really ties into that whole colonial system of masculinity, of abuse and things like that. So that's where, and I'm not by no means a doctor or anything like that. It's just Sherry's beliefs.
That's interesting, because a lot of the guys that do come in there, they are like that. They'll come in and go, well, my uncle told me this. My dad said I had to be this. So I'm going like, well, where did your uncle and your dad learn that? Because that's not the way we were.
No,
Like, we
no.
didn't abuse our women. We honored our women. Like, we were
Mm-hmm.
reminded by the moon and the earth all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but that gets so ingrained. Like, we got good at it, going to be all those male roles, like iron workers and wood
Mm-hmm.
choppers, and taking care of the family. The woman stayed home and all that stuff. That's not the way we were. That's
Mm-hmm.
not even balanced whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
kids don't get to have male role models, or dads and uncles, because they're all gone away now, and all with the moms. So we're feeding that feminine side more. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we get out there and we have trying to be masculine, we don't know how to be. We
Mm-hmm.
kind of take on the traits of the dominant society, I suppose, right? And what
Yep.
what what they've taught us through TV and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. And my mom is also a residential school survivor, so I kind of know some of these, not kind of, I've lived it.
Yeah, she does.
And knowing an awful lot of the intergenerational trauma that happens to our parents. But they don't deal and heal from that trauma, because when my mom was seeking help for her own trauma, her kids got taken away. And so that's a form of violence too, right? Violence
Mm-hmm.
against yourself and your femininity, and violence against your family. And so I know that within our generation, because you and I are, you're only a year older, not even a year older than me, but like you're 6 months older than me. And so we come from the same generation that, it's us now, it's left up to us to heal ourselves, so that we can break that cycle, so that our grandkids and our kids don't see this, or aren't experiencing the same thing. I can honestly say within my family, the one that I have here in Ontario,
Mhm.
that they've never seen that level of violence that either you or I have experienced when we're younger. Now, what would be some of the things, and my phone is ringing at the other end, I don't know, hopefully you can't hear it. But what are some of the things that you would be able to say to, maybe there might be, a single father, maybe some young boys that are watching that have seen this toxic masculinity that is happening in their own homes? What would you say, aside from, join you and for I'm a Kind Man session, but what else would you be able to offer them? Like, is there something that you would be able to say to them right now? Like, go to this place first, or go and watch this first, and then come to me. Like, what would be some of your advice that you would give our young men that may be watching?
Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot of services out there for guys, right? So we're really scrambling for that. Um, there are there generally are someone in your family that you can go to. There generally is. There's there could, like, an old grandpa. They've been through it all, and they're not going to try to enforce a lot of things. Generally, they don't want to be involved with it. They'll just sit there and listen. So sometimes that's all you need. You need to spit it out. If you have something to say, find somebody safe and which you can speak to. Maybe it's your grandma, maybe it's someone else. Just don't hold it in. Talk to somebody that you know that you can trust. It can be a friend, but also those friends can also be part of the issue as well, because they can perpetuate a little bit. At least it gives you a little bit of something to get things out. We hold things in, that's when we run into problems. A lot of the times we don't want to speak it because it makes us look weak, vulnerable, and heaven forbid, we don't want to be either one of those two things. So, and then come to my program.
I know. Now, I know that you've done mindfulness meditations and stuff like that. And that again is something else that is just a little, that people aren't maybe used to for a man's perspective or whatever. But I know for healing, it is really, really good. But I know that you've done mindful meditations as well. And so can you speak to a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
If I was able to, it's hard to get somebody who's never meditated to speak on the phone about meditation. Oh, I can't do that. I won't do that. Blah, blah, blah. Until you can actually sit with them and show them that we meditate all the time, every day, anyways. That then it becomes a little bit easier. But meditation is extremely powerful, and one of my greatest ones is the breathing. I mean, we breathe all the time. Um, Part of the issue when we're abused and we're in high anxiety, we're not breathing deep enough. We're just breathing above the heart. So we don't even breathe to our hearts. So I like to teach the guys how to breathe deep inside themselves to bring it past your heart and back out again. A lot of time also, when we breathe that shallow like that, we're compressing carbon dioxide in lower parts of our lungs, and that is poison. So, and that's the poison that we feed in our brains, which causes anxiety, overthinking, improper thinking, and all those things, unhealthiness within our bodies and our organs. So once we can learn how to breathe and get that out, things start to settle down, and you may be able to get through the course of the day just by a few simple breathing techniques. Very simple. Anybody can do it anytime. And then there are other deeper meditations, sound vibrations to help in tune yourself into a better being of who you are as well.
Now, I know you and your current partner have done an awful lot of traveling, and to find teachers and to find different modalities that really resonate with you and your heart and your practice. And can you tell me some of the travels that you've gone on, and maybe some of the teachers that you have that you've met on your travels?
Well, a couple, I suppose. One of the greatest ones is when I went to South America. I went to Peru and I met some of the indigenous people down there, learning about them and how really not too different they are from the indigenous people up here. We have a lot of similarities and commonalities within those things. But some of the things I like to do is really work hard on the deep rooted traumas of who they are. So they go into those certain kind of ceremonies and how they go in deep. So there's a lot of different nations down there. I guess they call themselves tribes. I don't like tribes, but nations down there. So there's all different kinds down there that do these sorts of things. Probably not something I can really speak about on mainstream like this because it is very confidential, we'll say. So that portion. Um, I've been to Arizona, ran into some people there that do a lot of ceremonies in the desert, again, using different kinds of medicines as well to help with their own personal mind and heart and spiritual healings. I've been a lot of places, all across Canada. I've met some out in BC even. Calvin Heelan was one. He's a big advocate for Indigenous rights in BC. I have a book by him and the whole bit. His brother made me even a case for it. I've been to the East Coast, out to the Mi'kmaq places out there, learned a few things out there with them. I've been all the things that I've done, it's not just Indigenous healing. It's for me, it's more like spiritual awakening, because I the more I was packing stuff into me, it wasn't fitting properly. I've done all kinds of healing modalities, Reiki, and all kinds of things. I have big stack of papers like this. And what I was doing was basically covering myself with papers and not fixing myself until I had started ripping that apart and started using them on myself is when I began to heal. And even going into my own community, listening to the old stories and learning the ceremonies and stuff wasn't enough for me, because there's so much pain from residential school, because even those old guys at the time, the white people this, the church that, the government this, as we're getting ready for ceremonies, so they would be giving me hate even coming in the ceremonies, and I couldn't do it. I began to fill myself up with that and not filling myself up with the ceremony. So I had to eliminate all that and try to find those things that work inside of me. I have Tibetan singing bowls. I have all kinds of musical gadgetries. I have something right here. It's called a kora. So it makes nice sounds when you can play it properly. It's not tuned right now. Drums. All these things started to fill my spirit up, and which started closing this residential colonialistic hole inside of me. Yes, I'm still got colonialism in me, but it's not affecting me like it used to. Is I'm not blaming anybody. I'm the master of my healing. So I guess that's kind of where that is. There's lots of things, Sherry, that I could go through.
Yeah, and I like how you say that you're the master of your own healing, because that's really where it starts, right? Is really knowing, okay, well, I know that I need to go down this road. I know that I need to heal myself for myself and not for anybody else, not for your partners, not for your kids, not for anybody. It's for you. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, is actually to look in to see how you can overcome. And of course, yes, you need professional, there's people that you can talk to. There's different things that you can do. This work as well, because we are advocating and trying to raise the voice of Indigenous folk, and also have the negative stereotypes about us in the newspaper and things like that. So it also does become very hard for the people that are doing this work as well. So I know that for myself, that I really have to protect and use my own medicines in order to get through, to heal myself. Because again, we know about the Christian God or that whole piece, but what about our own spiritual essence that we were born with, and who is that spiritual person, that energy source that's in all of us? That tells us what we should and shouldn't do, right, as well. And then to really look at those 4 quadrants, like you said earlier, your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical self. And so it's interesting too, when and you've been into some of our schools where, sometimes, they'll be asking, well, can you just make a medicine wheel? I just want to make a medicine wheel, right? Without understanding that, the medicine wheel is a lot more complex than just a medicine wheel. Because we have, if you're I'm a kind man program is 7 months, right? Of just
7 weeks, actually.
7 weeks, sorry.
Yeah.
So if it's 7 weeks, and then at the end of 7 weeks, you can make a medicine wheel, because you would understand how those intersections really become intersected, right? Like, that they look at all sorts of, so if we're not healthy in our spiritual self, we're not healthy on this other side. So it's really looking at that whole thing. And the importance of of looking after self. Can you just give us a little bit more information about, just that importance of looking after self and where you've, because we've known each other for 15 years, I think even longer than that. I was
Maybe, yeah.
I was in the back room there thinking like, okay, well, Six Nation, right? Anyhow, and I've seen so much growth in you, and you've seen a lot of growth in me in the last 15 years that we've known each other, right? And, and so just, I guess just, talk a little bit about like where your spirit lies back then to where it is now. And that might be a little broad, but if there was one interruption in your life during that time, what was that interruption to say, hey, enough is enough. I need to work on myself.
I've been doing this a long time, been working on myself for like almost 30 years. But more so, yes, in the past 10 years, really digging deep inside of myself. So uh, I've helped so many people. People always said to me, "Oh, Doug, you're a great healer. You're a great healer. You're a great healer." And I'm going, "No, I'm not. I'm not a healer. I've never healed anyone. I've helped people. I give people tools in which they can do their work. I can't I can't heal them. A doctor doesn't even heal you. Doctor fixes you up a little bit, and then your body begins to heal. You have some other things. The doctor writes you a prescription. You take the prescription. You hand it to the pharmacist. The pharmacist fills it out. You get the prescription. You open the lid open, and you're the one that takes it and puts it in your mouth. You become your own healer. Those are the things that we tend to forget, that we have those abilities. So what are we going to do for that to keep that healthy inside of ourselves? We need to find things that work just for me. My healing journey will not fit inside of you or anyone else on this planet. My wellness within all that, I had to really take a look hard. What is it that makes me feel good? I like it when my grandchildren jump all over me and love me up. That's pretty spectacular. I like it when my daughter calls me up out of the blue and tells me she loves me. That fills me up as well. So that connection, that family connection, yeah, there's some that I wish was stronger than they are. They are what they are. But I like going for walks. I like to listen to the trees. That fills me up too. And even if people think I'm crazy, I might be walking in a crowd and I'll just stop because I can hear something. The birds or a bee or something buzzes by me and I acknowledge it. That fills me up. Those are things that feed my spirit properly and gets me to the end of the day. So I'm not all cluttered with all kinds of stuff. And the one thing that may have pushed me back in because I might have faltered, my partner. she really likes to she's good at what she does too, and we've been doing this together for some time now, and she knows when I'm starting to feel low or I'm taking somebody else's stuff on and not realizing that I am, because I'm actually good at not doing it, but I'm just human. And she'll remind me, hey, you told me that you're not supposed to be doing that. And I'll go, oh, shoot, thanks. And then I take a couple steps back and I start walking forward. And I thank her for that every time. I may not like it at the moment, but I thank her every time. So there isn't really one thing that does. All I know is that something does. Then I have somebody that my support person here likes to kick me back into that straight and narrow again.
Now, I don't know if you have any reading that's on your nighttime stand that you read on a regular basis, and if it is, would you like to share with our viewers?
Well, right now, basically what I'm reading is my grief manual because I'm trying to get myself back into verse because I've technically been off for a year because of COVID, and I have a guy that's going to graduate tomorrow, so that's basically what I've been doing, my own personal work stuff. To read anything special. I have books that I like, medicine books, alternative medicines, ancient medicines, medicines from South America, medicines from Tibet. I like to know about those things, those healing plants. That's my passion right now. I really love that I can walk on the grass, especially now it's starting to come out. Whatever those plants are, there's millions of plants on this planet that does amazing things. I want to find out more about them. I want to see what they can do to help.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. Thank you. I was going to ask a few more other questions and, but I know that we're cutting into your dinner time.
I've had dinner,
Um,
but
oh, you have. I know we're kind of taking turns in our
yeah.
house here. But I just want to thank you so much, Doug. Like it is different to be vulnerable on this platform, and to really talk about who you are and what you can bring. And it is quite different, but but how important it is to be in community. And when you are in community with other men who are wanting to be better men, they have a role model to look up to, and which is you. A lot of our men are like you said earlier, that some men are being court appointed to take your program, and that's a good thing, because they never learned how to be a kind man either. And sometimes we do stupid things, and some of our men are in jail because of stupid things. But it doesn't mean that we don't that they're the offers there. And and I just really want to thank you. I'm so glad that you've done this work, that you continue to do this work, that you're a role model to many men, and a role model to a lot of our students when you come into our classes. And I know even the classes that you go into in Mississauga, you really make an impact to a lot of those high school boys. And so thank you, from the bottom of my heart. I'm so glad that I'm able to share the screen with you, and we're continuing to do the great work that we set on our path 15, 16 years ago, to continue doing this work together. So
If I
thank
may,
you.
if I may say
Uh-huh.
something, if I may say
Yeah,
one more
please.
thing, what's this thing? Every now and again, you need to be built up, right? Like things get a little heavy, and you need some affirmations, positive affirmations. And I see a few coming up on the screen here. But my partner, she, I, I have an ability that sometimes I'm not even aware that I have. That there could be some guy in crisis, and all of a sudden I'm there, and I'm talking to him, and blah 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 blah, and all of a sudden he's feeling better. Or I'll make a comment on Facebook at something, and some guy says, "Well, that's because you're who you are," and I'll go, "Well, that's because you're saying that because of who you are, right?" And then this comment I got just on the weekend from this guy saying just the simple little things I did transformed his day. And my partner said, "That's because you're magic. You don't even know how magical you can be." And it's true, I don't. And I'm not trying to say my ego is way out here like this. It's just when it is a passion and it's something that you love, it's not work. You don't even know you're doing it. You're just doing it. And that's what I believe part of the KJ program, and especially for men, once you really start to feel this deep inside of you, it's not work anymore. I don't have to work to be a kind man. I just am a kind man. And it becomes easier and easier. Like we said, and you said it at the beginning, we're good at what we practice. The more we practice this, it becomes so much easier. It just becomes a day thing, an always thing.
No, you are such a huge role model. And I remember when one of our teachers had called on you, because one of their
Mm-hmm.
friends' parents had passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and you had just gone, and it was your service. Like, you felt you were compelled to go and help this person and family, to help them transition to meet the Creator. And that was a service that you did for that family. And I still hear comments always, from that one teacher, of the transformation that you made, and that impact that you made on that family. And that family wasn't an Indigenous family.
Mm-hmm.
They just really needed to hear those words of wisdom, the words that they knew that they would get when they reached their Creator. And you were there. And so there's just so much depth into you, Doug. And I know these side stories, and I know these things about you. And Kelly, of course, she can attest to all those things as well. She's your partner, after all.
Yeah. And not here,
And
I thought
so,
it was so shallow. Hold
you've
on, let
met
me
my
fix my hair.
family, and my girls love you, and my husband loves
Mm.
you, and
And
you
I love
know
all them
and
too.
and you've made a big impact in their lives as well. And, you know, so again, I just want to say thank you so much. My girls still have their little stone and crystal that you gave them years and
Nice.
years ago, remember?
Long time
So
ago. Yeah, they were
long
just
time ago.
little. Now I
Yeah,
see
yeah.
pictures. I'm going, oh my God, those aren't the little girls I know. Awesome. You've done a great job there too yourselves.
Yeah. So again, I just really thank you so much. You know, your bravery and your strength shows right there today, this morning, or not this morning, this evening, of the depth that you have and the vulnerability that you have, because we need to have a space where our men can be vulnerable as well, and to really be able to speak about it, and then come, you know, have tools and in their toolbox to still continue their practice. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to see you one more time again.
Hopefully it's
And
more than one, but so next
no,
time
no, yeah, it will be,
next,
but on this platform,
right, next
we're
time
seeing you one more time.
we're going to talk about love, which is probably one of the hardest segments of the kind man. It's one of the hardest. I mean, as the 7 weeks go on, you get more in depth into things, but the second week of love, man, the guys really, their eyes open right up when they realize uh, about love. I'm not going to do any spoilers here.
Love's a wonderful thing. I had to jump in because I'm watching you guys and, you guys and gal, guy and gal. I love this, and we're gonna edit this anyway at the end of the video. Won't be on here, but you are, Doug, awesome. And it takes a healed person or a person on their healing journey to be able to show up, to know that you're called, and because you're just there at the right time. Like you are being called to do this, and it's really very honored. Like, I'm honored to be in space with you, and
Thank you.
excited to talk about all of the things that are happening in Halton, and just being there for our community to support them while we figure out together how we're going to move on, in this time, because it will be challenging. And a big part of it is going to be connecting to self, right? Like, that's what we need to do. What kind of tools do we have from each other, right? That we can pick up from each other.
Right. I went and did a video for locally here for the PSWs. So how can they engage with Indigenous people who are transitioning out, right, from long-term care or for whatever hospice? And I just got a message today because one of the things I gave them was because the PSWs, they're so full of so much weight and heaviness, right? Regardless of how it comes from administration to clients. So I gave them that little stone teaching. Remember, I told you about the stone. Like you can talk to the stone, debrief to the stone, and then when you're done, put it down so you're not taking that into your next client. Well, apparently they've instituted this as something that a requirement within them, and it has touched 500 people. And I'm going, what?
It's just a stone, right? Like, you're like, come on, this is ancient knowledge, right? And you know what though? We talk about this a lot, that we're just in that time. It's like we're in this huge portal now of energy that is awakening people. And it's a part, like, this whole Awakening the Medicines Within series that we did is all about this. And it's all about supporting each other. And so we're really grateful that you're around and hanging out with us and offering your gifts and knowledge and love to the community. It's really important, and we're really excited that we get to do this with you.
Well, those are the things that fill me up too. Those are required in my life where it's not like I'm out looking for it. It just happens to me, like just happened to be in that space where that person was passing away and they wanted somebody to come in, and just being there. A lot of times I don't question, except on Sunday afternoons. I'm not going anywhere. But if I have to, I do go.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I interrupted the two of you, but I just had to jump on and say hi and it's just really wonderful. And I'm really excited, even for the next. Like, love is what I love to talk about too.
This
Yeah.
one's gonna be. It's a tough love. This one, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, you got to get through
About
the tough
healing.
love to get to the real love. You gotta break through, and we're all in that time. So thank you so much for everyone showing up today and being here, and Sherry for always having my back. And Doug, you're a rock star.
Sorry, you.
We'll see you soon.
Yes, you will.
Don't hang up, Doug. Don't hang up.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.